ンピオンズアベニューに進む。その後左方向。 後キャサドラルストリートを左方向。信号
got that video because there's many people from the same group who were attacking. Some of them they are taking some videos, sending social media. Yeah, there were a video everywhere. So I only noticed about that around 11 night time.
And what did you think, Mohammed, and what did you feel when you get this video showing that your cafe, your business has been put on fire?
I shocked, my brain completely stopped. This is shocking. It's very, very sad, really. It's a family business. I've been working for 10 years. This area, all these buildings that myself and my other colleagues using, these buildings were empty for more than 10 years, most of them. Some buildings.
Does life actually
We started business.
In terms of imprisonment, life does not mean life in Ireland when it comes to punishing convicted murderers. Treason and murder are the only crimes subject to mandatory life sentences. As you say, over the years we have spoken about many murder cases. We have never discussed a treason case because I've never covered a treason case. Life sentences can also be imposed for other serious offences, I should note, including rape, attempted murder and assault causing serious harm, but they're not mandatory. When it comes to handing down sentences to convicted murderers, judges' hands are tied at the moment. They must hand down that one-size-fits-all sentence. It is not life imprisonment. It can be life imprisonment, but more often than not, it is not. It's usually about 20 years on average that a lifer will spend actually behind bars. Now that sentence will hang over them for the rest of their lives, and even post-release, if they breach the conditions of their parole, if they commit other serious crimes, they can be brought back to prison to see out that life sentence.
Okay, and sometimes you see a lot of victim impact statements, and you see people outside in the courts afterwards, and they're very upset that they feel the sentence doesn't match the crime.
Yeah, one that springs to mind immediately for me is Ryan Casey's victim impact statement after that grueling trial, the trial of Joseph Pushkin, who was convicted of murdering Ryan's girlfriend, Ashley Murphy, down in Tullamore. And in his victim impact statement, he asked the court to hand Pushkin the absolute maximum number of years possible. But as I say, the judge's hands were tied in relation to the sentence handed down to Joseph Pushkin. But in Ryan's opinion, he said that is still nowhere near enough. So on the back of that, I suppose, and years of public debate in relation to mandatory sentencing, the government did decide to carry out a review of it. And what this new law proposes is that sentencing judges would be allowed to recommend a minimum tariff. I think that's important. It is just a recommendation. The parole board would then be free to accept or reject it. In other words, it would not be binding on the parole board. That is not the case in the UK or in the US, where they are judges, that is, they do have the discretion to hand down minimum tariffs, and that would be, say, as you mentioned at the top of the piece, 25, 30, whatever the case may be, years before somebody is actually eligible to apply for parole. As it stands in Ireland, a lifer can apply for parole, or at least is eligible to apply for parole after 12 years. They don't always get parole at the first time of asking. In fact, the data would suggest that they don't, at the average of 20 years spent behind bars for a lifer in Ireland at the moment.
Okay, Conor Halliday from the University of Galway, law lecturer. Why is it that if somebody is sent to jail for life because of murder, that they can actually appeal to try and get out after 12 years?
Well, it's not an appeal.
Sorry, apply is what I should have said. Sorry.
Apply, yes. At some point, if we're going to have any kind of system of parole, of early release, that we're going to have to set a point at which a person can bring an application. We currently set at 12 years. Prior to that, it was actually 7 years, so it has been increased. But 12 years in the context of a particularly gruesome murder does strike many people as being simply inappropriate and far too light. Now, it does need to be stressed, as Frank just said, very few people would be released at 12 years. Typically, it's currently running about 24 years on average. But what this new proposal will do is essentially allow us to distinguish between murder cases. It's effectively a recognition that not all murders are necessarily the same. Some are very much worse than others. And by making this recommendation, the sentencing judge will be able to highlight that this particular case is particularly bad. And that will be a factor that the parole board will give due weight to in its consideration whenever an application comes forward.
Connor, why in Ireland do we not have whole-of-life murder sentences? As in, as you say, I mean, murder, you could say, is murder. Any murder is appalling, loss of life taken illegally. But in some circumstances, the perpetrator is judged to be of extreme danger to other people and deserves, maybe even if not of danger to others, deserves really incredibly strong punishment for what they have done. Why are we not like other countries that say this person is so bad they need to be incarcerated for the rest of their life?
I don't really have a good answer for that, I'm afraid, Matt. We have traditionally emphasized the importance of rehabilitation, light at the end of the tunnel, and so on. I guess we have been unwilling to discard the possibility of redemption. That is obviously changing. These proposals reflect that change. As the Justice Minister said, under these proposals, a sentencing judge will be able to recommend very lengthy terms, 20, 30 years. I guess, depending on what the statute ultimately says, it may well be possible for the judge to recommend a whole-of-life sentence. We don't know yet. The devil is in the details. So that may well be on the way. It's certainly in legislation in the other jurisdictions of these islands, so there's no reason why we can't follow suit.
Frank Grady, though, when you have situations where you do have parole boards deciding to reduce a sentence or leave somebody out because they've applied, can family members of a victim apply, or even indeed a victim, say for example in a case of rape, apply to have the parole board decision set aside? Or do the victims or the victim's family even get told as to what's happened?
They are informed and they are given some notice when a prisoner is applying for parole, and they do have a role to play in the parole board's decision. They do now, in more recent years, have a voice, although speaking to the victims and family members of victims over the years, I can tell you that they feel that that voice isn't being heard at parole board level, and such, I suppose, the lack of transparency in relation to the work of what is an independent body. You know, media, for example, are prohibited from attending these hearings for obvious reasons. But it is traumatizing and re-traumatizing for victims and victims of the families when parole comes around every 12 years or so. And you know, I'm mindful of the family of Sharon Whelan and her two daughters, Nadia and Sarah, who were just 7 and 2 years of age when they were murdered by Brian Hennessy on Christmas Eve of 2008. Now, Brian Hennessy, I know, has come before the parole board on 2 separate occasions, most recently I think just last month, and he has been refused parole on those occasions. But I've sat in the home of her, Sharon that is, her elderly parents, Christy and Nancy, who invited me to join them on one of their daily pilgrimages to their girls' grave down in Winegap in County Kilkenny. They spoke about how, you know, as parole approaches, they are re-traumatized by what happened, you know, that they aren't given any peace, and that perhaps if a judge was allowed to say in the case of the likes of Brian Hennessy that he wouldn't be eligible for parole for 20, 30 years, at the very least that would give the likes of Christy and Nancy and, you know, family members of other victims whose loved ones had been killed in such devastating and heinous circumstances, that would at least give them some reprieve, that they know that they don't have to focus their attention on this person for a very long time.
Okay, in the time I've left to me, I want to ask you about something else, Connor, please, in your standing as an expert on sentencing. And it's in relation to bail, because yesterday we heard Nick Ferrari tell us that in the UK, what they're doing at present, because of this surge in violence from far-right extremists, is that when arrests are made, they're dealt with speedily in the courts, but that people aren't given bail. They're remanded in custody until such time as there is a hearing and then a sentence is set down. Would it be possible to do that in Ireland? Because, as I pointed out to him, in certain circumstances we've had in this country with incidents, it seems that we've had lengthy investigations, and that when people are charged, it seems to take an age before we actually get to actual any hearings, and they're out on bail at the same time. In some cases, potentially
600 メートル先、セイント
There
モビー
are
ロードを右
instances
方
in
向。
which a person can be refused bail, and that's set out in the Bail Act of 1997. Typically, it will be refused if there are grounds to believe that the offender is going to interfere with victims, destroy evidence, or is going to reoffend in serious offences. But the presumption is always in favour of bail, because the person being charged is presumptively innocent and has not yet been convicted of anything. The courts and the law generally is very slow to deny bail. There has to be very good grounds for doing so. So unless there's very particular evidence indicating that this person is going to commit further crimes or is going to interfere with victims or destroy evidence, probably not.
Okay, and Frank Rainey, just to finish, could you explain why is it so slow to bring people to trial when it seems it can be dealt with very speedily in the UK?
Different jurisdictions, different resources. It's not an easy question to answer, Matt. The wheels of justice certainly, move slowly in this country. It takes a long time to gather evidence, to prepare witnesses for trial, things like that. And also there's a limited amount of judges that can hear these particular cases. The court's obviously now on vacation as well. Doesn't help matters. They won't be hearing trials again until October.
信号でセイントモビーロ
After
ードを
holidays
右
for
方
all of
向。
August and September, when crime continues.
Yeah, well, look, there are still vacation high court sittings, and obviously the district court doesn't close at all. That's open all year round. So you will have people who are accused of committing a crime, and they have to be brought before a district court judge at the earliest opportunity. So the district courts will remain open. But in terms of trials being heard before judges and juries in the likes of the Central Criminal Court, the new term begins in October, so we won't hear any jury trials before then.
Frank Rainey, our TFM courts correspondent, thank you very much, and Conor Hanley from University of Galway, law lecturer. Okay, we'll be back with Danny McConnell. The TikTok Taoiseach, Simon Harris, likes taking to social media to let us know what he's doing, but he's very concerned about what others are doing on platforms such as that, and he has plans for a crackdown. We'll hear about that after this.
The last word on Today FM with Matt Cooper
and Life Pharmacy. 95 locations nationwide, including Life Pharmacy's wards in Monaghan and Mulcahy's in Mallow. Today FM.
Dave Moore on Today FM.
Every week I tell bad jokes, and sometimes they're actually good. And latest Olympic news from Brian: in an attempt to change its image, equestrian dressage is to be renamed Strictly Comprancing. Very good. So good.
Dave Moore.
With on-post insurance.
Weekdays from 9 a.m. on Today FM.
800 メートル先、
the new
左車
Buffalo
線
Tower
を走
Burger
行
from
して、
KFC.
マリマンロ
High
ードへ。
streets heat with so many tasty ingredients that they probably won't fit into this radio ad. But here goes. A spicy zinger fillet, lashings of sensationally tangy buffalo sauce, a crunchy golden hash brown, cheese, crisp, fresh lettuce and burger dressing, all topped with a delicious glazed sesame seed bun. Phew. The Buffalo Tower Burger. Grab it before it goes. Available until October 6th while stocks last. Participating restaurants only. Full T's and C's at kfc.ie.
Microfinance Ireland is a government-funded lender, supporting both established small businesses and startups. Our business loans are unsecured, with interest rates as low as
このまま信号を
6.5%.
通過。
Find out
その
more
後
at
次で左車線を走行。
microfinance.ie. Microfinance Ireland, helping small businesses with big ideas.
Surfboard, boogie board, skateboard, diving board, full board, half board. I think I'll try the cheese board. Board game,
信号
sporting
で
house.
左
Don't
車
forget
線
the
を走
boarding gate,
行し
tourist
て、
board,
マリ
chessboard,
マンロ
menu
ードへ。
board. Welcome aboard. Go on, fill up your year with great travel moments. If you're on board, let us take care of your travel insurance while you look after making memories. So, pack multitrip.com with all your holiday essentials. Get a quote today on multitrip.com. All aboard! Cover more Blue Insurance Services Limited, trading as multitrip.com is regulated with the Central Bank of Ireland.
The last word with Matt Cooper. Today FM. It all happens here.
Danny McConnell, editor of the Business Post, is with us. news because today Taoiseach Simon Harris, nicknamed by some the TikTok Taoiseach because of his love for posting on social media, has been giving out about how others have been using social media platforms. Danny, he seems to be suggesting that he would like to talk to Elon Musk about this. I say there's a fat chance of that. But he's also talking about regulation, getting rid of self-regulation. How does he plan to do that?
Yeah, so this is on the back, Matt, I suppose, of an increasing and ever, I suppose, mounting level of abuse towards him, other politicians, families, etc. like that. And essentially, I suppose, what the context of all of this is that big tech companies like Twitter and Facebook, you know, are American companies, and they have a much more liberal idea of what free speech is than we probably operate here in Europe. So therefore, there's a far greater level and concentration of pretty vile, nasty attacks. I suppose what Simon Harris has done on foot of these sort of attacks and increased levels of protest, I suppose that this is part of a wider sort of increasing in the heat of attacks on politicians across the board in Ireland. You know, some linked to anti-migrant kind of protest groups, etc. like that. You know, he's decided enough is enough. He decided to call it out. Looking to regulate it in terms of, I suppose, looking to bring those who are in charge of these content providers, you know, the content providers essentially, they need to play their part, and he's talking, you know, we're talking about, you know, serious penalties being involved, you know, that, you know, making sure that where harmful and illegal content online, that companies will essentially pay their part, and if they don't, they'll be subject to pretty serious penalties. But again, given that these are global companies, they may have presences here in Ireland. It's not exactly clear exactly how they would do that and legislate that in isolation away from maybe a pan-European type system.
Indeed, and is there any sign that he has agreement with other EU leaders that there might be a common front taken to confront these irresponsible social media companies?
Not yet, but I suppose the counter-argument to that is that because a lot of those tech companies are headquartered here in Dublin, a lot of other European countries are looking to Ireland, and our director of, or the DPC, the Data Protection Commissioner here in Ireland, to sort of take the lead. So there probably is a level of support for Ireland to toughen up its stance and be the lead player or the lead actor in this. But I would think that any sort of major move on this would be done somewhat hesitantly, given, I suppose, their employment presence here in Ireland.
Well, indeed, and the corporation tax receipts that come in, could that mean then that there will be sort of all talk and no action on the part of the government, that there will be a fear of taking them on for fear of financial loss?
There definitely is, and I'm sure that, you know, that's the leverage that these big companies have. You know, they have headquartered their European operations here in Ireland. So I don't think the prospect of removing themselves from Ireland is an easy option, given how much real estate they own or occupy in Dublin, and how much money they've spent on, you know, renovating and developing offices here. So I don't necessarily think it's a you know, a straightforward threat of you do this, we'll pull out. But it certainly would lead to an escalating of tensions between government and these tech firms, because they've essentially been opened here or welcomed here in Ireland, been open arms for many years. I do think this day has been coming, Matt. I think there's been an increasing kind of frustration building within the system around the lack of action. I've had it with, you know, staff members and myself who have been subject to abuse in my previous job and elsewhere, you know, where we've had to take on these companies and with little or no success. They really have, I won't say thumbed their noses at us, but they've not exactly been kind of forthcoming with their willingness to kind of tackle down on some of this more extreme abuse that certain people in the public eye have to suffer, you know.
I'm sorry, Danny, I did see somebody today making the point that Disney acted because clips from the forthcoming famous Fabulous 4 movie got online on both Facebook and Twitter, and when it moved, the owners, Meta is the owner of Facebook, and X quickly cut down and stopped the content to be shared. But they don't do that when it comes to thugs trying to encourage and incite violence against others, that they're utterly selective in what they decide to crack down on or not, and that for all of the talk about freedom of speech and Elon Musk trying to be some sort of freedom of speech hero, it's all down to the money. It's all about getting traffic and getting volume and getting money from advertising on the back of that.
Absolutely, and you're 100% right. I thought it was interesting that Tánaiste Micheál Martin, speaking on Radio Kerry this morning, described X as kind of mindless, informed stuff, and he basically believes that the presence of Twitter and X or whatever it's called these days, poses very significant challenges for government. But I think you're right in terms of the approach to be taken by these tech companies. This is all about bottom line and revenues and advertising. I mean, I think as we spoke recently enough, Matt, these tech companies are harvesting and the phrase describing them as parasites. They're hoovering up a huge amount of advertising revenue, not just here in Ireland, but across the world, at the expense of traditional media like ourselves. So, they are cannibalizing media markets. They're absolutely capitalizing on major advertising revenues because they have the reach, but yet they don't police sort of extreme views that are being articulated on their platforms. They seem to do so when there's probably fear of illegal action from a big corporate entity like Disney. But if you're Joe Public and you've been absolutely railed against and getting dogs abuse, if you're a politician, there seems to be precious little that will be done in your favour.
Indeed, and it's deeply ironic that Elon Musk is now threatening to sue various media organisations or various companies for not advertising on X. I mean, whatever about freedom of speech, he doesn't seem to believe the companies should have the freedom to decide where they want to advertise or not.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And again, but I mean, a lot of these big companies who are the great champions of free speech, when it suits them, but when it doesn't suit them, or when the game goes against them, they're the first people to lawyer up and seek to kind of exploit or use or leverage the court system in their favour. This is kind of art capitalism at play, Matt. This is these are people who think they're above the rules, generally speaking. They don't generally think themselves as compliant with government policy or regulation. They think they should be excused or exempted from it. But there has been a notable shift in tone from government here. So I think what there'll be, certainly from our perspective, we'll be looking to see what Simon Harris does in the advance of the next European summit and whether or not this issue gets on the table at that European summit. Because I would think it would be unlikely for him and the Irish government to move in isolation without some sort of imprimatur from the Commission in Brussels or from other European countries. But I do say, I've been around enough summits to know that there is a kind of a look toward Ireland as that lead data regulation entity in terms of the DPC to take the lead. So I do think if there was a move to tighten up, there may be more support there than they may think initially, but I haven't heard of any concrete moves in that space just yet.
Thank you so much, Daniel McConnell, editor of the Business Post. The author, Donal Ryan, with us next.
The last word on Today FM with Matt Cooper
And Life Pharmacy. Advice on hay fever so you can get out and play. Life Pharmacy. Live better together. Join me at lunchtime on Today FM for the perfect sandwich. A layer of chaps. Is the child of Prague in there somewhere? He is in the boot. Is his seat belted in? Tell me about Louise Cancel. This is what AI had to say to me.
I do not have enough information about that person to help with your request.
Combination hill and some questionable fillings. Where did you get a dragon's breath pepper and why do you have these in your home? All sandwiched together with the Kills Stars, your professional services partner. Visit greenstars.com /IE to find out more.
The Club Card gives you the power to more. Score a banger with our Summer of Sport pizza meal deal. 2 pizzas and 2 sides for just €12 from our exclusive crust and crumb takeaway range. Tackle dinner easily with the takeaway classic crust bangin' barbecue chicken pizza. And slam 1 in, or even 2, with 2 slamming sides, including takeaway buzzing garlic dough balls. Get more from your shop with your Tesco Club Card or app. Shop in-store or online. Tesco. Every little helps. Subject to availability. Prices vary in express stores.
The Carol Nash Historic Festival is back at Mondello Park, August 10th and 11th, offering a unique experience that combines the thrill of live racing, classic car shows, a festival atmosphere, food village, vintage fun fair, and live music. If you are passionate about motorsport, classic automobiles, or just looking for a fun day out, don't miss it. The Carol Nash Historic Festival at Mondello Park, Saturday and Sunday, August 10th and 11th. See mondellopark.ie.
Nipping out to get bin bags.
We've got some.
Finally, better take the dog out.
But we don't have a dog.
Okay. The double Big Mac is back at McDonald's.
What? Get the keys.
The Double Big Mac and the Double Big Mac with bacon are here for a
500
limited
メートル
time.
先
Don't miss
ウ
it.
ィトンスロードを左方
Available
向
until the 3rd of September from 11 a.m. Subject to availability. Participating restaurants only.
The sale you've been waiting for is here. Save big today in the Casey's Furniture Summer Sale. Plus, for a limited time, we're offering free delivery on orders
over €750. That's right, incredible savings and free delivery. Browse and buy in-store in Cork and Limerick and 24/7 on Casey's.ie. Casey's Furniture. Choose once, enjoy forever.
The last word with Matt Cooper.
Today FM. It all happens here.
Delighted to be joined by one of our leading novelists, a man who certainly has his finger on the pulse of modern Ireland, and maybe that's a good description, the pulse, given that his new book, his latest novel, is Heart Be at Peace. Donal Ryan, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure.
This is a companion, is it, to your breakthrough work, The Spinning Heart?
Yeah, it's kind of a standalone sequel, so it definitely can be read.
Sorry, hang on, what do you mean by a standalone sequel?
It means you don't have to have read The Spinning Heart to enjoy it and to follow it.
Okay.
So yeah, so it stands alone, but it's still the same format. It's 21 monologues and same characters, and it's 10 years after the action in The Spinning Heart.
What brought you back to those characters?
Well, they were kind of always there, and I always had kind of a plan to write a second Spinning Heart because it didn't feel quite finished. It felt as though there was more to be said. And also, I suppose that village where it's set is the same place where nearly all of my fiction was set since, and so characters from Spinning Heart have crossed over into other stories and novels. So it felt quite natural. And also my mum, God rest her, she asked me so many times, would you not just write a sequel to Spinning Heart, because she was so tired of being asked by her customers in Tesco's about the characters in Spinning Heart. Like, people said to her, and how's Bobby Man? Where is he now? And, you know, as though he was a real person. That's she said, just let me know. She's right, people know. So I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner, so she could read it, but it's done now, we thank God.
Sorry, how long was she dead?
She died last year.
Oh, sorry about that.
Spring, yeah.
How's that been with you?
Sure, it's, you know, it's a new world when your mum passes away, but I suppose it comes to us all, so it's tough, but right, yeah.
And has that influenced your writing?
I think so, actually, yeah. I did, you know what, my last novel, The Queen of Dirt Island, was written for Mam. It was about Mam, even though she didn't see it, but she didn't see herself in it. She couldn't figure out where actually what I did from. But this novel was written, yeah, I suppose, kind of in the wake of losing her, and I suppose it's kind of a tribute to her. I went easy on the bad language because she was never too fond of that in my books. She wasn't too accurate about using bad language. She didn't like it in my books at all.
So Spinning Heart was really the sort of the great post-recession novel. So
900メートル先、
I suppose, yeah, like I never intended that. It's just because I said Spinning Heart in contemporary Ireland in 2010 when I wrote it, there was no way of avoiding the recession. Just as like with the new book, there's no way of avoiding the current issues of the day. I mean, it's still there. Like people still, it's not as though Ireland is fixed and the economy is perfect, but people still feel the effects. But I do tend, when you're writing something that's set in the present day, I suppose you have to include some element of people's reactions to what's going on in the world. But I am not that political, or you know, I haven't a great grasp of economics, so it's not really my job to.
You know, it's how it impacts some people's day-to-day lives,
yeah,
isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And how they see the things that maybe others are supposed to be dealing with. But actually, the phrase "others," is this a big thing that actually is really sort of happening in Irish society and in rural Irish society at present? That there's a degree of othering coming in, and you know, from Tipperary, I suppose what we would have seen this year in Tipperary is the reaction in Rosscray to the refugees being placed in a local hotel. So that sort of thing, is that the reaction to that also a reaction to other things and change going on in society that people are struggling with?
Of course. I mean, you can understand how change is terrifying, and very sudden, very dramatic change to any place is going to be terrifying for the people who are there. So you can understand people's fear and frustration, and if people aren't consulted at all, and all of a sudden their landscape and the society they occupy changes drastically. I mean, you can't expect people just to stay fine, you know. So I mean, I think peaceful protest is always going to is something that people should have available to them. But of course, it should never ever turn nasty. And you know, and or be directed at individuals. It's a very complex issue.
Because you've been sympathetic to minorities in your writing in the past. I'm thinking you had a Syrian refugee, didn't you, in one of your books as well? And you had a traveller character as well. So you actually have understanding and a sympathy for those people who come from those who might be othered by people.
Absolutely, but I mean, you know, the likes of traveller characters, I mean, they were never, for me, they were never others, because growing up, there were travellers in my class at school, there were my neighbours and friends, and same with people from Syria.
That's not the way for everybody in Ireland, though.
And I was so surprised about that, actually. I remember asking somebody at the time who read an early copy of the book, who was involved in publishing, a good friend, and I said, do you think I got the voice right, traveller voice? And he said, I've never spoken to a traveller. And I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, sure, I suppose that's the case. If you're from D4 or whatever, like, you're not going to have encountered travellers, probably. But, you know, for me, that was a really alien concept. But that's just going back to my idiocy. I tend to go around the world with my eyes closed and have them open.
You could not go around with your eyes closed, given that you chronicled so many things that are going on in this country. You couldn't possibly.
Yeah, but I mean,
you're sucking up everything.
No, but that's the thing. Like, I always say that I'm always shocked into awareness, and I think that shock kind of has a profound effect, and it allows me to feel things deeply and to transmute them into fiction. Luckily for me, but you know, I mean, I find things out all the time that people knew for years, and I go, oh my God, and then I think very deeply about the thing, and so I give myself the job then of making fiction out of it, because that's the strange paradox about fiction. It, you know, making stuff up makes things feel more real.
How much fun though is it to go back to characters and develop them more than a decade on from what you'd written about previously?
God, I really enjoyed it. I really did. And it felt as though they were just waiting there. Like just one character in particular, Kate, and it felt as though she was waiting just to say, oh God, why took you so long? You know, and all this stuff happened to me, and I was waiting so long to tell you. You know, and I know this didn't happen. It felt as though the character was in my head dictating, and I was just writing it down. It was great, you know. It didn't feel at all as though I was making it up. I wasn't going like, what could she say next? What could happen to her? What could the story be? It just felt as though the story was there, and I just tap in.
Yeah, but how difficult is it to do 21 different characters, to get into the voices and the heads of 21 different imaginary people?
Well, it didn't feel hard. I remember years ago, writing Spinning Heart, I thought to myself, if I tell myself it's hard, if I allow myself to start believing this is hard, it'll start to be hard. You know, because the first few monologues wrote themselves, and I thought, if I just stay in the mindset and don't overthink it, it'll stay happening, you know. And I think because at the time I was so busy, we had just had a baby, and I had a new job, was working very long hours and weekends, and I thought, if I start thinking too much, I'll ruin it, you know. And I've done that. I've made that mistake over and over again over the years. I've overthought things and started to get too complex and gone off in weird tangents. So it's good to keep it simple.
Is Anne-Marie still doing the most important thing, which is reading your work in progress and critiquing and analysing it?
She is, thank God. I'm so lucky. Like it really is a blessing, because she has such a great eye. She's such a great reader. She's got a very natural skill for editing, you know, and kind of broad stroke editing. Like she say, it was no good or it is, you know, and I know.
Was she good at sort of spotting the connection between the Spinning Heart and the way the characters were there and the way they are now in your new novel?
Yeah, like the main thing I asked of Anne-Marie when I was writing that first draft of Heartbeat at Peace was whether it felt right, whether the character still felt true. And for the most part, she said yes. Thank God, you know. And so it's great to have that. Not everyone does.
For the most part, when does she disagree, and how does she disagree with you? And do you find it sort of damaging to your ego if she tells you you're doing this wrong?
No, she's gotten really good at it. It's really subtle, so I have to pick up on the subtle indicators that it's not quite right. There was something in her expression over there, you know, a certain tone she used. Well, no, so we won't have too much conversation about it.
But how do you react then? Do you get disappointed, or do you get frustrated?
No, I get disappointed. I used to sulk a bit, but I don't anymore, because I know everything's fixable. You know, there's nothing, I can never go too far wrong. So no matter what happens, I mean, who cares anyway? You know, it's just writing. A day's writing isn't that big a deal. You can just start again the next day and get it right. So there's no panic in throwing things away, restarting. And also, nothing's ever wasted. I mean, I've written whole novels that won't get published, but the act of writing them was a huge learning curve, so nothing's wasted.
Okay, I should have started where I'm going to ask you now, but tell us the story in Heartbeat at Peace.
Well, it goes back to the characters in Spinning Heart. So Bobby Mahan is still Subta in his small community. And Bobby has kind of assigned himself the job of sorting out the drugs issue in the area. Now, that's an impossible task. There's no way he's going to do it. But Bobby feels this terrible pressure as a man and as a parent, as he knows his children are in danger from local drug dealers. And it's a universal story. I mean, it's not just Ireland or rural Ireland or urban Ireland. It's everywhere in the world. I think every community in the world is affected in some way by hard drugs and the proliferation of drug dealing. And the fact that it seems sometimes as though the people doing it have impunity. You know, you can, I don't know how many times today, just around Dublin I saw drugs being dealt. You know, in Limerick, the other day I saw drugs being dealt. It's incredible. And you know what, it's a real imminent danger for young people. So Bobby has this thing in his head that he has to sort it out. And he's kind of trying to rally his friends and his colleagues to the cause. And so there's a conflagratory kind of ending to Bobby's efforts.
You mentioned that you saw open dealing taking place today as you're going around Dublin, that you saw it recently in Limerick. That there would have to be a perception, and it used to be a perception nationally, that these were urban issues. But how much has Ireland changed, even since the time that you wrote The Spinning Heart, where yes, there would have been drug use and drug abuse in rural Ireland, but that is becoming more prevalent, and particularly with the use of things like cocaine?
Absolutely. There just seems to be absolutely no supply issue at all. Like, they must have the best supply chain system in the world, these guys. You know, the ability to get drugs from wherever they're made to people's front doors is just apparently incredible. You know, and we know this, like, but I suppose, I mean, maybe social media and WhatsApp and stuff, and you know, people have the resources, and people have the means now to communicate much more easily, much more secretly.
But why do you think it is in the Irish psyche that we are turning to these drugs when there seems to be less of a dependence than there would have been on alcohol, which is something that writers over the decades and centuries in Ireland would have written about the Irish love for the bit of drink. And that yet we have people who are far more health conscious and younger generations who are far more conscious of fitness and of aesthetics, and yet they turn now to drugs which are arguably even more dangerous than alcohol.
I suppose it goes back. It's like the lesson we were taught in secondary school over and over again in civics class. You'll be offered a free sample, and you'll take that, and you'll get hooked. Like, we were always told that in school, you know, that's how drug dealers operate. And I suppose that must be it, you know. And apparently, people who take cocaine really enjoy it the first time. So I've heard. I wouldn't know, honestly, but people, this is what I'm told, and it's highly addictive, obviously. So that's the way it goes, I suppose. You know, you get hooked, and that's it. You're in the net, and you keep paying out. I mean, I've heard horror stories about people being visited, people's families being visited, and their homes being ransacked, and people who have lost their life to drugs being told, but you still owe the money, they still have a drug debt, and the drug debt's increasing exponentially, you know, and people and people being told, well, you've no choice, you have to pay them, you know. And this is what gets me, that these guys walk around, and we're all supposed to be scared of them. You know, and as a society, we're supposed to allow them this space, and they are allowed this space. You know, and it's very hard on the guards. I mean, they're you know, you can't do sideways these days, so it's, you know, it's tough.
Okay, look, I have come out of time. You are going to be talking to Alex Clark, I believe, in the Pavilion Theatre in Dunleary tomorrow week, Thursday the 15th. There are tickets available at paviliontheatre.ie. I'm sure you've whetted the appetite now for many people. And the book, Heart Be at Peace, is available in the shops from tomorrow, I believe.
That's right, yeah.
Congratulations. Thanks. Another great book. Donald Ryan, thank you so much for being with us. We're having such a great Olympics, and we'll be talking about that when we come back after this.
AFM's travel update with GetSetGo.ie. Game-changing online car, home and travel insurance that's faster, better and easier.
Diversions remain in Limerick on the N69 between Askeaton and Foynes following a crash this morning. In the city, Clare Street outbounds congested from Lockheed to the Pennywell Road junction. Traffic is slow on the N25 in Cork on either approach to Lakeview roundabout in Middleton. Very heavy traffic remains west of Wexford town in either direction on the N25 and N11. And in Dublin, the Fifth Road outbound is slow from Constitution Hill to Hart's Corner. And Collins Avenue has a westbound delay from Celtic Park Road to the Swords Road junction. Mark Hogan, Today from Travel.
The last word on today's Stradbally County Laois. With headline performances from Noah Kahn, Calvin Harris, Kylie, Jerry Cinnamon, Codaline and Ray. A musical and artistic adventure across 600 acres of rolling hills and forests of mystery. With only days to go, music, art, comedy, food and holistic health, it's the most delightfully diverse lineup of the year. See electricpicnic.ie. The Lotto jackpot is an estimated €5.5 million. Play responsibly in-store, in-app or at lottery.ie. The National Lottery. It could be you.
Looking for a perfect Irish escape? The brand new Ravenport Resort is now open. Just a short walk from the white sands of Carrickloe Beach with breathtaking views, world-class amenities and Irish hospitality. Indulge in delicious dining, rejuvenate body and soul in our health club and create lasting memories. Visit ravenportresort.ie today.
Well, wait till you hear why thousands of families are going full Lidl.
What do you have for your school lunch?
A roll with chicken maybe, ham maybe, or maybe jam with croissant with chowder.
And I'd imagine cheese maybe, relish maybe. Go on, go full Lidl today.
Microfinance Ireland is a government-funded lender, supporting both established small businesses and startups. Our business loans are unsecured, with interest rates as low as 6.5%. Find out more at microfinanceireland.ie. Microfinance Ireland, helping small businesses with big ideas.
The last word with Matt Cooper. Today FM, it all happens here.
We were hearing from Ben earlier how about 1.4 million people watching live Kelly Harrington win her gold medal last night. That was just an RT. God knows how many more were streaming it or watching it elsewhere. One of the great performances, Cathal Dennehy. And what a way for her to announce that she was ending her career.
Yeah, what a cap to put on an amazing career in Irish amateur boxing. I mean, it was a stunning performance. Kelly Harrington, we saw her rise to the top of the world in Tokyo 3 years ago. If anything, at the age of 34, this was even more impressive. I mean, she outclassed the world champion Beatrix Ferreira in the semi-final, and then in the final, it was an absolute domination. I mean, the fighter she was up against just had no chance from bell to bell. It was a brilliant performance, and what a way to walk off into the contest. So often for athletes, it doesn't finish with that fairy tale. For Kelly Harrington, it did.
It did. It was a tremendous thing to observe. It was a great moment of Irish national pride to see our 4th gold medal, and to think that it's come across such a range of sports between swimming and rowing and gymnastics and now boxing. I don't know whether it's fair to think that we're going to get an athletics gold medal as well, because Rashidat Al-Leke is in against some extraordinarily good runners in the 400 metres, and she has to come through her semi-final first tonight. But I think, Carl, we can be highly confident based on what we saw in the heat and in the times that she has clocked so far this season that she should come through to the final and be a serious medal contender.
I absolutely agree. I mean, Rashida has an amazing semi-final draw. She has looked out with this draw because she do finish her 3 semi-finals tonight. Not 2 people go through, and then there are 2 overall time qualifiers also advanced to the Friday final.
Okay, Carl, sorry, we're having real issues actually hearing you, so what we're going to do is we're going to just literally take, if you could just hang up, we will come back to you and we will try and get you on a better line, because we do want to talk as well about other things that happened on the athletics track earlier today. There were achievements for Irish athletes and there were disappointments as well, particularly in the repechage in the 1500 metres, where Sophie O'Sullivan finished 4th in her repechage, just ran out of gas at the very end. And the same for Sarah Healy. The difficulty, but it was the same for everybody, but certainly it seemed in the heat to take it out of them that they had to go and run again to try and qualify for the semi-finals, and they both by 1 place missed out on reaching the semi-finals, which was a little bit off what they needed to be on the times. And the only Irish 1500 metres runner to reach the semi-finals is Cathal Doyle in the men's. So I haven't spoken about that. Mark English in the 800 metres. Carl, was that a surprise that Mark English qualified so strongly for the 800 metres semi-finals?
のストリートを左方向、その後目的地に到着。
The guy he was coming down the home straight right beside is a 141 man. He was just off the world record this year. So, you know, he's going with one of the big, going head to head there with one of the big gold medal contenders from France, Gabriel Joual. Mark English, he's never made a World or Olympic final, but he comes to Paris in the form of his life. He looks amazing. He looks better than ever coming down that home straight. And if he's ever going to make an Olympic final, it's here in Paris.
And what about Sarah Lavin in the 100-metre hurdles? Does she have a shot at making the final?
I think it's going to be hard for both of them. They're both underdogs to make the final. There's going to be 3 semi-finals on Friday afternoon around midday in the women's 100-metre hurdles. Going to be top 2 in each, and again 2-time qualifiers. And she has to make, you know, she's going to have to run an Irish record. Her Irish record is 12:62. She's very capable of running 12.5. It's going to take that at least to make that final because it is just so loaded. But the way she ran this morning, you know, there was 3 12.4 women in that race. She beat 2 of them, she only lost to 1 of them. So she's already taken some big scalps in Paris, and she's again in the form of her life, ready to go faster than ever before.
Okay, but surprises do happen in athletics, and just leaving the Irish aside for a moment, after all the hype about the men's 1500 metres last night, Inga Brixen of Norway against Kerr of Scotland. Inga Brixen doesn't even get a medal, Kerr gets silver, and an American called Hawker comes through blistering finish in a blisteringly fast race. A race for the ages, wasn't it?
It truly was. I mean, there's been a lot of great Olympic finals and leaders. It is one of the ribbon events, but this really goes down in history. I think it's the best one I've ever seen anyway, for sure, and many other people I speak to, seasoned veterans. I think really what we saw was that Inga Brixen had his eyes too much on Kerr. Kerr perhaps even had his eyes too much on Inga Brixen. You know, Inga Brixen, it was a bit of insecurity really for him. He was too worried about everyone's kicks. Instead of winding up the pace the way he normally does, he didn't trust that that was going to work again, so he decided to go hard from the gun. He went too hard, he kind of dug his own grave really and just had nothing left in that last 100. He was very classy, very measured and very magnanimous in defeat. And also Josh Kerr, I think he was pretty much hanging the gold red medal around his own neck with 100 metres to go when he knew he had Inga Brixen's number. But Cole Hawker is an athlete who's made a big jump in the last couple of years. He's a very talented young American, and crucially, you know, he has the biggest kick of all those athletes. People thought he wouldn't be there with 100 to go, but when he got himself strong enough to be there in the final straight, there was only going to be one winner.
Okay, and just in other sports, I think already on the first day of the women's golf, I think any ambitions we might have had for a medal there would certainly seem to be disappearing, would they? With both of our competitors finishing 6 over today.
Yeah, Leona Maguire and Stephanie Meadow, it was not a good day for them, unfortunately. The Golf National, it was just, things went from bad to worse really for Leona. I think, Stephanie was never truly expected, I suppose, more hope and expectation that she could get amongst the medals, but I think there was a fair bit of expectation around Leona given her results on the professional tour, but unfortunately no joy for her, and it's going to be very, very hard to come back from that deficit for the coming couple of days.
And what other Irish things do we have to look forward to in the remainder of these Olympics? The relays, what about that?
Yeah, the women's 4x400 metre relay is Friday morning, the heats of that, so Rashida Leckie, because she will very likely be involved in the final of the 400 metres that night, will not be available. So you'll be looking at probably Kelly McGrory, Sophie Becker, Charlene Maudsley and Phil Healy lining up for that. That is a team that can make a final, but it's by no means certain. They were actually 9th in the heats initially overall in Budapest last year, and disqualification managed to get them into the final. I think it's going to be very similar here. It's going to be 50-50 whether or not they can get into a final. If they can add Rashida to that team then in the final, which they would, that's on Saturday, they would certainly have, I don't think it's a realistic medal chance. I think it's far more likely to be kind of a 5th place, but weird things can happen in relays. And I think the other potential medal chance, and it's actually a much more realistic medal chance, is Daniel Whiffen. We've seen the heroics he did in the 50-metre pool. He goes in the 10-kilometre open water swim. It's the equivalent of the marathon for swimmers. He's never done this